Hi, Weirdos. This is Andrew coming in hot to wish you a happy Labor Day weekend. At least to all my American weirdos. To my non-American weirdos, this is one of the few days a year we actually get off, so it's a big deal for us. Now, in order to celebrate this, I wanted to talk about one of our very first episodes, and in fact, we're re-releasing an episode we originally released back in April of 2020, and it was on the very first recorded labor strike in history. And in order to do this, we had to go all the way back to the twilight of New Kingdom Egypt. And this was under the reign of Ramses III, arguably the last great pharaoh of Egypt. And this was a labor strike where people, namely workers, were unhappy with their condition and stopped working. So couldn't think of a better episode to release on our Labor Day. Weirdos, I really enjoyed recording this and researching this years ago, and I even enjoyed re-listening to it, which is rare because I actually hate listening to my voice, fun fact. So without further ado, let's just get into it. This is the first recorded labor strike in history. Strike it down.
This short break from civilization is brought to you by the Ford Bronco. Get back out there. The Ford Bronco. Built wild. Learn more at Ford.com/Bronco.
Want a website with unmatched power, speed, and control? Try Bluehost Cloud, the new web hosting plan from Bluehost. Built for WordPress creators by WordPress experts. With 100% uptime, incredible load times, and 24/7 WordPress priority support, your sites will be lightning fast with global reach. And with Bluehost Cloud, your sites can handle surges in traffic no matter how big. Plus, you automatically get daily backups and world-class security. Get started now at Bluehost.com.
Hello and welcome to History for Weirdos.
We're your hosts, Andrew
and Stephanie.
And each week, we're going to take you on a journey into the strange, obscure, and relentlessly entertaining corners of human history.
Now listen up, friends, because it's about to get weird. Hello, Weirdos. This is Stephanie.
This is Andrew.
And we are here with episode number 15.
Number 15.
Yay! Thank you all for being here. And Andrew has been working very diligently. On these episode notes. I've been working very diligently on some papers for graduate school. But equally important, you wrote this episode for today.
Honestly, this is much more important.
Right.
Then you...
I not being sarcastic, I agree.
I was being 100% sarcastic.
So, babe, why don't you tell us what weird history stories you have for all of us today?
Well, before I get into the story, I just want to say that you only have less than 2 more weeks of school left.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's true.
You're going to be graduating soon. This is going to be the last episode that I do before you're done with school.
I know. Yeah.
That's so. I just wanted to take a moment and show how awesome you are, or just show gratitude how awesome you are.
Thank you. That's so sweet. That means so much. I can't wait to be done. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Well, enough of praising you, I guess. Going into the story.
Yeah.
This was actually a pretty interesting one, and this is gonna be the farthest we've gone back in history. So I titled this episode, Strike It Down.
Strike It Down. I like it. Very forceful.
Very forceful because this is the story of the very first labor strike in history.
The very first labor strike?
The very first. We're going all the way back.
And you said this is the
oldest.
The oldest, the farthest in history.
What? Yeah. How, what type of I don't know. What type of civilization do you think this is?
Oldest labor strike.
Yes. Is it American? Is
No.
it English?
No.
What do you think?
I mean, if it's the farthest we've gone really far back into history. So this would be the ancient Greeks or the Etruscans or something like that.
Even farther back. This is the ancient Egyptians.
Ooh, ancient Egyptian labor strike?
Yes. And we actually have a record of this, which is amazing.
That is so crazy.
On like over 3,000-year-old papyrus scroll.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was actually like surprisingly like semi-well documented.
Wow, I'm so interested to learn more. It's like you said, first of all, it's crazy that we even have access to this information.
I know. And to like the viewers and to you, I want to like kind of, I wrote this down specifically because I wanted to show you like how far back this actually is. So
yeah, put it into context.
I'm exactly what that's going to do. So, and yes, listeners, you heard that correctly. This happened over 3,000 years ago in ancient Egypt. So, to put that in perspective, this is almost 300 years before Athens even gains prominence in Greece, before they're even like a big deal.
Okay.
This is over 400 years before Romulus's legendary founding of Rome.
I can't even.
This is almost 700 years before the Spartans' famous battle of Thermopylae, the 300 battle.
Yeah.
And then this is over 1,000 years before Julius Caesar is assassinated.
That is insane.
Yeah, over 1,000 years before Julius Caesar assassinated.
So this is ancient history even to Caesar.
Yeah, this would be ancient to Caesar. This would be old to Caesar, man.
Wow.
Yes.
You're setting a really cool scene.
I know.
Old stuff.
And especially what I love about this too is like, I'll get into this later, but they had no idea how big of a deal this was at the time.
Yeah.
And especially because we usually think of labor strikes of things that happened in the 19th and 20th centuries.
That's exactly what I would think.
And unless you're in France, then it's about every 2 weeks.
Exactly.
When the train operators go on strike.
literally the two things I was thinking of.
Yeah, seriously,
like
right?
New York in the 19th century or France right now.
Yeah, France for the last 300 years.
Yeah.
Apparently.
That's so crazy.
But, so, now that we have a little bit of context, we can continue to set the stage with like some of the precipitating factors that went on behind the scenes. So we're focusing on Egypt at a time where they are the biggest kid on the block and its power is pretty much at its zenith.
Okay. So this is the ancient Egypt that we think of.
Yes, but like kind of later on. This is in what's called the New Kingdom period. So there's the old, ancient Egypt, by the way, like lasted for thousands and thousands of years, even longer than like Rome. So I know
crazy.
It's really weird to think about.
And definitely not something that I think we really acknowledge when we think about Egyptian history.
You can go back like 2,000 years at this point and you're still in like ancient Egypt, like as a, kingdom.
Wow.
Period. It's nuts.
The history, and I would love to go to Egypt.
Yeah.
The history in Egypt is incredible.
I mean, like I could spend hours just going over like kind of the nuances and like the details of like the different like, periods of this empire. But like, we don't have the time for that.
Right.
But, I will say like, that this is towards kind of the end. Like it's at its zenith, but it's really only downhill from here on out. But again, that's like kind of like a slow roll downhill. Like that takes hundreds and hundreds of years instead of just like a sharp decline.
Yeah, typically how empires fall.
Exactly. So Egypt is also considered an empire at this point, and its territorial expansion not only includes all of, of course, present day Egypt, but large swaths of Sudan and Eritrea, which is like a small African country to the south, portions of Libya to the west, and Israel, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and even into southern Turkey into like the west.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Southern Turkey, wow.
Yeah, seriously. It's pretty nuts. An important reason to like how this kind of immense expansion happened was, amongst other things, heightened military, sociological, economic, whatever factors. There was one actual important cultural thing that led to this, and it's called MAT, which is it's spelled MA''AT.
MA''AT.
So MAT. Yeah. Yeah, MAT. And like its strict adherence, the country from the pharaoh all the way down to slaves.
So that's what MAT Ma'at means is strict adherence, the practice of...
Well, basically, it essentially boils down to the concept of universal, and I have this in quotes, communal and personal balance, which allowed for the world to function as it should according to the will of the gods.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, so it's almost kind of like this like kumbaya, like we are all in it together kind of mentality.
You know, and this could be like a really bad comparison because I obviously don't know enough about either culture, but it reminds me of when Elizabeth Gilbert reflects on her time in Bali. She just, and we've been, but still a really beautifully rich culture. She describes Balinese culture as like a beehive. Like everyone has a purpose and a place at all times, and that's what Matt sounds like to me.
Honestly, like from what I researched, that sounds actually a really good description of it. I like that a lot. And in fact, like the pharaoh's kind of biggest prerogative was to ensure Maat and to uphold and facilitate it as a way of life.
Wow.
Yeah, that was like his number one or his or her number one goal. Which is pretty intense, you know.
That's really intense.
So, like, this is obviously very important.
Yeah, it's universal balance to please the gods.
Exactly. So, you know, and this had been the kind of the custom for thousands of years, from the Old Kingdom into the Middle Kingdom and into the new, what we're now in the New Kingdom, and towards the latter part of the New Kingdom. So let's fast forward to the rule of our boy Ramses III, who was in power from 1186 BC to 1155 BC. So a period of like a little over 30 years. He ruled actually pretty peacefully for the first 20 years of his reign until the quote-unquote sea people attacked.
Oh no, the sea people.
The sea people.
The Atlanteans?
Atlanteans, I think. That's accurate.
Okay.
Yes. It's funny you say that though, because historians really aren't sure about like who these people are.
Really? Oh, yeah. They haven't identified like, it's very obviously.
They think it could have been the Mycenaeans, which is like, you know, like kind of like the Proto-Greeks. But again, that's only a guess. We really have no idea who these people are.
The sea people.
We know though that Ramses successfully fended them off and like pretty much quote-unquote pwned them.
Okay, pwned, yeah.
Yeah, he pwned them.
I'm sure that's how he would describe it.
And then, you know, like, it was either, like, it was a massacre. Like, you know.
How?
They sailed into the mouth of the Nile. They had archers on both sides of the Nile just shoot arrows at them. And so they just got, like, pwned, basically.
The sea people must have not understood what they were getting themselves into.
I do not think. Because they brought, like, their families and everything along for the ride. So, like, they thought it was going to be an easy victory, which to me is like, wow, they vastly underestimated their opponent.
Or I wonder, and we'd probably have to do, like, much deeper research into this. I wonder if they were even trying to conquer or if they were just showing up.
I think they were. Because it was, they, like, arrived in, like, warships and stuff like that. Whatever.
But what if that's all they had with them?
I mean, who knows?
We don't know.
Yeah, this is true. This was over 3,000 years ago. So
interesting.
Have no idea. But yeah, kind of important though, because, and the reason why I bring this up is because wars cost money, and this depleted the imperial coffers quite significantly.
Okay.
That's important to notice.
Yeah.
And I literally tap my head on this because it's important to note that.
So because of the fact that they pwned the sea people.
Yes.
They're starting to run low on cash.
This literally sounds like I'm just making this up on the fly. But I swear this actually happened. And I'm doing like a really bad job. I'm not even making up names for these people.
Yeah.
Like the sea people.
The sea people came.
Sounds like just like ridiculously unimaginative.
Yeah.
So you know, basically, we won. Let's build some temples. That's Ramses' thought process here. Not really sure, you know.
Like when you're feeling really good about something you did and you take yourself shopping.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what he was doing.
Like pharaoh status.
But pharaoh status instead of shopping is like, we're going to build some temples to the gods, y'all.
Okay.
So kind of weird, but okay. This wasn't really generally the brightest idea because, again, like I said, coffers were empty. You need money to also do these things.
You do, yeah.
And again, this is, I repeated myself again multiple times. However, I can't overstate the importance of this.
Mm-hmm.
Because this would eventually one thing would lead to another, and things wouldn't be so hunky-dory as they are now. So he wanted to build these temples, but obviously construction projects cost money. And contrary to popular belief, Steph, actually I didn't know this, Egypt didn't solely rely on slave labor. In fact, that wasn't even their main source of labor.
That's so interesting, because when you like presented the topic of this episode as being like an ancient Egyptian labor strike, I was like, would it not just be a slave revolt? Like,
no, because that's different.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like
it's
an
not
actual
labor when you enslave people, don't pay them.
Exactly. Exactly.
So they had workers.
They had in fact they needed skilled craftsmen. So these were skilled workers. For these large projects, like kind of like almost like old school like engineers and like, you know, like artists.
Yeah.
They were not cheap to employ. They cost money. So now to the good part, the strike itself. So it all started when the pharaoh was like straight up 3 weeks late to pay his peeps. This had been going on for a while, and the workers had kind of more or less taken it because of Matt.
Matt, yeah, they're like, we are fulfilling our responsibility. We're in our place.
Exactly.
The pharaoh will have to uphold Matt as well.
Exactly. Like it's his duties to, to pay us.
Right. So they're just thinking they're going to wait it out.
Exactly.
And it'll get better.
And it's like, yeah, it'll get better. But things just never got better. This went on for like, honestly, like it went on for years.
What?
Yeah. So finally, like at one point, he's like 3 weeks late to pay his peeps. And they were like, quote unquote, yo, this ain't chill, dog.
Wait, so he was years late or 3 weeks late?
No, it was years of like getting, waiting to get paid or being paid late.
Oh, okay.
And then getting
paid late.
Yeah. And then finally at this point, it's like 3 weeks though. It's like, come on, man.
Right. People go
way
hungry.
Too late. Yeah. And so, and it gets only weirder after this. It actually wasn't the pharaoh. The pharaoh never kind of knew about this. They relied on, basically bureaucrats underneath him to facilitate payments and all of that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Basically
like, that's
facilitate payroll, right?
Yeah, that's not a day-to-day thing the pharaoh would do.
Exactly. And it's actually stipulated that he never even knew about any of this until like much later, at all.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So when I say the pharaoh, it really the bureaucrats literally offered them barley so that they can make beer instead of just giving them money. So it's like not only did they not
they didn't just give them beer?
No, like they didn't even pay them off with booze. They just pay them off with the things that could make booze. That's so lazy.
I know that you are tired constructing these pyramids.
Yeah.
And we haven't paid you for your work, but if you want to go home and try to make some booze to numb the pain, here you go.
Basically, that's kind of exactly what happened. Also, I love that beer was around back then.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I know.
Of course, beer was around.
I know. I love that. So, and again, this was had been going on for literally years. And this was just the straw that broke the camel's back. And instead of continuing to work, the laborers laid down their tools and sat at the very sites of the temples they were supposed to be building. Indeed, this would be the very first labor strike.
They did a sit-in?
A sit-in, yeah.
That's so cool.
Thousands of years ago.
Like a peaceful protest.
Kind of, yeah. And so, and it just gets even weirder because at this point, Ramses, again, doesn't know what's going on with the labor because his subordinates are essentially hiding it from him. And the reason why they were doing that is because if Ramses had figured out or had been told what was happening, he probably would have actually executed the bureaucrats for not having the situation under control. Right. Pretty harsh punishment.
Right, because if the situation isn't under control, that means Ramses isn't upholding Matt.
Exactly. And that social unrest can ensue, and then he really isn't upholding Matt at that point.
I also would wager that the bureaucrats who are failing to pay the laborers are making sure that they are still getting paid.
Oh, yeah. It was because of corruption. I'm almost 100% like positive of that.
This sounds eerily familiar and relevant.
Whoa. Huh. Interesting.
So interesting.
Yeah. Well,
times
change, but governments don't. Huh?
Nope. We're making sure we get paid, the government, but here's like some beer.
Yeah. Yep. Anyways. Anywho. So again, I don't think I mentioned this, but Ramses wanted to have a festival to mark his 30th year of his reign.
Okay.
So he's like, yo, like Coachella, y'all, but across the whole country. And so, that's fine and all, but huge problem. He had a whole bunch of pissed off workers that were not given their like typical allotment of grain and moolah. So, they're pissed off. Local officials have no idea how to address the situation because this was literally unprecedented, right? And so in a move that probably inspired a French queen many years later, the confused royal officials were like, I don't know what to do, bruh. Let's give them some pastries.
She didn't say that.
I knew you were going to get pissed off.
She's misquoted.
I know.
Marie Antoinette's a very harshly judged historical figure.
Yes, she is.
But so, okay, again, they still don't have the grains or the money to pay these people who are doing work, and so at this point they've done their protest. They're protesting
for years at this point.
They've been protesting for years, and the pharaoh doesn't know.
He doesn't know.
How do stop losses work on Kraken? Let's say I have a birthday party on Wednesday night, but an important meeting Thursday morning. So Sensible Me pre-books a taxi for 10 p.m. with alerts. Voila! I won't be getting carried away and staying out till 2. That's stop loss orders on Kraken, an easy way to plan ahead. Go to kraken.com and see what crypto can be. Not investment advice. Crypto trading involves risk of loss. Cryptocurrency services are provided to U.S. and U.S. territory customers by Payward Interactive Inc., PWI, DBA Kraken. View PWI's disclosures at kraken.com/legal/disclosures.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. With over 122 million parts, you can make sure your number one ride or die stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply.
Ooh, that's embarrassing. And so they're giving them pastries?
Basically, yeah. And the funny thing was, they gave them pastries, and it actually worked for like the day. Like it worked for a day. They're like, okay, fine. They took the pastries home, split it with their families, whatever.
They must have been hungry.
But then literally next day, back to striking. So it only worked for like literally just a day.
Well, yeah, because people are hungry.
Right, and it's sugar, right? So like it gets metabolized pretty quickly. Pastries. So, again, like this standoff continued to it had already been going on for years and continued to last for months, going back and forth between working and everything, going along more or less smoothly to then breaking into like sacred temples and demanding pay from priests and other royal officials.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it's just like gone back and forth. And in my favorite thing is like at one point, they even went as far as to take over and block all access to the Valley of the Kings. The significance of this is that no priests or family members of the deceased were able to enter with food and drink offerings for the dead. And, this was considered a super serious offense to the memory of those who had passed on to the afterlife.
Wow. So this is like the opposite of Matt.
Yeah.
No, this is going down.
Yeah. I mean, years, they're pissed off. They're like, yo,
it's chaos.
It's pretty much chaos. When officials finally appeared with armed guards and threatened to remove the men by force, one striker responded that he would damage the royal tombs before they could move against him. So the two sides were stalemated.
That's right. Damage those tombs.
Damage those tombs.
You deserve to get paid for your labor.
I know, right?
Yeah, I'm on their side, obviously.
Oh, yeah, no, totally. I mean, this was literally just complete negligence and just malfeasance, I guess, on the part of the government.
Yeah, they were completely inept.
completely.
And then they were like, you're still going to do whatever we want and whatever we say, right?
Yeah.
And then the people were like, no.
Sprinkle some corruption by like officials.
Of course.
You have yourself a party.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, terrible. So eventually at some point though, work either concluded or the workers are finally paid what they were owed, and the strike finally ended after years.
I wonder do you think it's this stalemate situation that was the motivating factor for the bureaucrats to get their stuff together?
I mean, you could only speculate, but I think honestly, it probably was a part of it, but
because if they had done that, if they had damaged a royal tomb, it's very likely that the pharaoh would have found out.
Absolutely.
And everyone's heads would have rolled.
Yeah. No, that's actually a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, to be honest with you.
That is insane, though, that like governments have been this stupid for so long.
Long.
That's really what's astounding me. I'm like, wow, it's never been...
It's never been good.
Yeah, it's never been efficient.
Yeah, I think government and efficiency should just like never be used in the same sentence.
One can hope that one day.
One day.
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely, I think our grandchildren would die of old age before that happens, and then still it'd be 1,000 years.
You're such an optimist.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I love the most about
you. So, remember when I mentioned Matt earlier?
Yeah.
I'm sure you did, because I think we've repeated it like multiple times already.
Yeah.
But I didn't mention that all willy-nilly. This is actually pretty important.
Okay.
So the workers here really felt, and this was actually documented, that the officials in charge of paying them were in breach of Matt. Like, were formally in breach of it, which is, or was, a huge deal. Like, huge.
Ew.
Yeah. So this type of mentality had been the preeminent way of thinking for millennia. And for all intents and purposes, it looks like there were, deep fractures in that framework, which would have dire consequences for Egypt.
Okay. Based on their universe and the way that they're cultured, this totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And the way things have always been done.
100%. And there's really like kind of two major points that come to mind when I think of the strike, and both would have incredibly important consequences, not only for Egypt, but honestly the history of the world.
Right. Right, because as you mentioned at the beginning, this empire was so vast.
It was, yes. And it was really important. And this event, which I don't think they understood the importance of this event. I mean, there's no way they could have.
Yeah, we don't really always understand. It's rare that we understand that we're living in a time that will change everything.
Exactly. And they certainly were. Word. That's what I meant to say. So the first, again, being going back to that breakdown of Matt, I think this was kind of the sort of the beginning of the end for them. So again, like I mentioned in the beginning, like they're at the zenith of its power, but it would only go downhill from here. Ramses III was considered kind of the last great king of the New Kingdom period.
Okay.
And kind of going back to the strike, it eventually became a blueprint of future workers on what to do when they weren't getting their way.
Good for them.
Good for them.
Yeah.
I think so. And I think it's safe to assume that this strike, though, in particular, was pretty just. The workers were literally only arguing to just get paid what they were owed, right?
Of course, yes.
However, though, future strikes weren't as just and as kind of clear as these.
Okay.
So, for example, like oftentimes workers would then strike because they just wanted more money, like out of the blue. They were just like, oh, we're not getting paid enough.
Maybe they weren't getting paid.
I mean,
enough.
Again, like that's a possibility, right?
Yeah.
Or they just wanted, some other concessions, which again, like may or may not have been just, but the consequence was that these became more frequent.
Yes, of course.
And would continue, basically continue to not work until either A, their demands were met, or B, which would eventually become more often the case, they were like forced back to work under the threat of violence.
That's terrible.
Yeah. So basically what I'm trying to get to here, very eloquently, I might add, I'm not being eloquent at all.
Okay.
But that, essentially the hairline fracture of Matt that, began with the very first strike became like full-blown breaks later on and would eventually lead to the end of the New Kingdom period. And again, the consequence of this for Egypt was that it would never be the same powerhouse that it had been.
That's interesting because it's almost like the workers in this initial first strike that you're talking about, when they claim that these bureaucrats are in breach of Matt and, how that jeopardizes the Egyptian empire, they're right.
Yeah.
In a way.
Exactly.
They didn't do what they were meant to do, and that had these massive, like this big butterfly effect almost, like a domino effect, whatever you want to call it.
Exactly. And again, I'm glad you said that too, because like I'm not trying to like paint the workers here and being like, oh, they're the reason why Egypt fell. There's many reasons for like why they fell, but it is interesting to note that this very first strike kind of maybe kicked that snowball down the hill that eventually became ginormous and brought down this empire.
Mm-hmm. It disrupted order.
Exactly.
And to the first thing that comes to my mind with that is that while this just such a different world and such a different time, obviously, than we can even imagine, like this empire, most empires aren't known for peace and for taking care of their people.
Exactly.
So it's like they all have an expiration date. And it's like, it's almost when you look back at history, it's trying to find out what was the thing that led to the inevitable.
Right. Or that, exactly. Like there's always like a powder keg or
there's always something.
What lights them? What starts the match that lights the fuse?
And when that fuse is lit, it also leaves room for a whole new world.
Exactly. And I'm glad you said that, because that literally kind of like brings the conclusion to my first point is that its fracturing eventually made it weak and more fragile, and paved way for other empires in the area, like their arch nemesis, the Hittite Empire, which eventually fall, and then finally it would come crashing down and ushered in the Greco-Roman period with the conquering of Egypt by Alexander the Great.
Yeah,
and then that lasted up until the Byzantines fell in Egypt.
Wow.
So long time,
right? And culturally, like obviously, like we said, people, we so, at least from what I understand in Western culture, we are so proud of our rights as workers, or like we really cherish our rights as like the right to strike if you're being treated unfairly is something that is still so important today.
Yeah.
That literally led to a whole new way of thinking and realizing like, wait, just because you're the boss and you have the money doesn't mean you have the power. Because without me, you don't have product.
That's so funny you say that, because that's literally my second point.
Really?
Yes, the second is the importance of the labor market.
Yay, we're so in sync.
I know. And it's funny because, like, I had mentioned this earlier, too, in the episode that they had no idea what to do with this, because they're like, you guys just aren't going to work? Here's some cake?
Do we give them beer? No, just give them barley so they can make beer. Okay.
That's not working. Here's some pastries. You want those?
Right.
They had no idea. And this is really the first real account of labor being taken seriously. And we're no longer just manual laborers being used as pawns to just make things for like, a pharaoh or like some other royal, like, family or wealthy people.
Yeah, some wealthy people that don't
give a shit about them.
Give a shit about your humanity. Yeah.
Exactly. And in a way, this would pave the way for all future workers' rights laws, edicts, and even like company policies, right?
Yeah.
That have existed and exist to this day.
That is so
like even
crazy.
Like a lot of company policies that, like give you 21 days of PTO or whatever, right? I'm just throwing that out there. Ironically, that's how many days of PTO I have a year. That's not like something that's mandated by the government, right? That's just something that my company offers me as part of my compensation package so that, it is, something that attracts talent, right? Attracts the top labor.
Because labor matters.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Or even the simple fact that if you, hopefully, if you work overtime, you get paid time and a half or whatever it is. Both of those examples can be traced back to these badass Egyptians.
Yeah, these weirdos in Egypt, like 3,000 plus years ago.
Oh my
gosh,
like, the bureaucrats must have been like, who are these weirdos?
I know.
Like, what do you mean you're not going to work?
Like, oh.
But we just keep promising to pay you and then we don't do it. Why wouldn't you work? I don't understand.
I know. No, and it's funny because it sounds ludicrous to us, but that was literally their thought process back then.
Yes, it does sound ludicrous to us, but these were the trailblazers, the first people to pave the way and be like, wait a second, if you're not paying me, why am I showing up every day?
I know. Pretty cool, huh?
Good for them.
Pretty cool. I like them.
Yeah, and I am grateful that they were weird.
Yeah, they were weird.
And they made a new world. And they didn't even know. They didn't know. They would have no idea that we'd be talking about the ramifications of that today.
They would not.
And I'm sure it must have been scary and intimidating to be like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to go. But it really paid off, literally.
It literally paid off. Well, that is my story. The story of the very first labor strike in history.
And what did you title this? Strike It Down.
Strike It Down.
I love that so much.
I know. I knew before I even started my show notes, when I figured out this was going to be an episode, I'm like, that's the name of this title.
Yes. Strike it down. Strike down the jerks. I don't know what they were called.
The pharaoh and ruling class.
Yeah. Meanies.
So mean.
Well, thank you so much for teaching us about the very first recorded
labor strike in history. That happened
history.
Again, I'm a huge Romanophile, right? So I'm obsessed with Rome. 1,000 years before Caesar was assassinated. Over 1,000 years. That's ridiculous.
Super impressive that we know that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, no, right?
Thanks, babe.
No worries.
And we also wanted to just say thank you to everyone who has, rated and reviewed our podcast thus far. We're obviously still a fledgling podcast, but we see those 5 stars and we see those really nice comments from you guys, and we just want to say thank you. And if you have a weird history episode or a weird history topic, I suppose, that you want us to do, where can they reach us, babe?
They can reach us at historyforweirdos@gmail.com. Or you can also hit us up at historyforweirdos on Instagram. And then also at Twitter.
Yes.
And then also we have a TikTok, which is at history_for_weirdos.
Lots of places to get in touch with us because we want to meet more weirdos. So please don't be shy. Reach out. You have any ideas, any comments, any corrections, suggestions. We are here to listen.
Exactly. We love you, weirdos.
We love you, weirdos. Thank you.
Bye-bye.